Welcome everybody. This is the official HEX Collective channel, and we have another episode of the podcast, and for the first time as well, video. So whoever is listening to this, we will make this video available as well. I have here my friend Christa, and we are connecting via Zoom, via the internet, of course. And Christa right now, she's in Salt Lake City, right? And I'm in Berlin, so this is like 8 hours difference. It's pretty amazing. We last saw each other in Florida in January for New Year's Eve, and I'm so happy that you could make it and that you're willing to be on this podcast. Obviously, it's about something that Christa feels really passionate about, and the topic is aviation. We might go into other topics as well at a future stage, but today we're going to talk about aviation. So over to you for an introduction, and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey through life, and how you got to where you are right now.
Awesome. Well, my name is Christa Campbell, and I moved to Salt Lake City in October of 2018. So we're in June of 2020 right now. And that day I joined a women's empowerment group where we started New Moon Circles, where we were doing manifesting. And that day we made a vision board, and I decided that I was going to focus all of my passions into three particular things. And that was yoga and dance, becoming a pilot and all things to do with aviation, and then focusing on spreading love and eventually family and marriage. So those became anything that didn't fit into that Venn diagram of I am those things. Then I knew that it wasn't going to be part of my passion and it wasn't part of my calling. So I really wanted to focus in on those things. And I just like a week ago, got my certified flight instructor or certificated flight instructor certificate, which means I can now instruct others on how to become a pilot. And so it's kind of, for those that don't know aviation, I had a friend compare it to like getting your master's degree in something. So it's
awesome. Congratulations. I didn't know it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, it's just as much money, if not dedication, as becoming like a lawyer, maybe not quite as long as a doctor. You could become a pilot if you had about $80,000 and 2 years of your time and no job. You could do it and get all of your licenses from private pilot through CFI, Certified Flight Instructor. For me, it took, I'll start with, I used to be living in Miami, and I graduated at the University of Florida with a degree in architecture. So I was always really into design.
Were you born in Miami? Are you from Florida originally?
Yeah, born and raised in Miami. One of the only blonde hair, blue-eyed, raised Catholic girls, I guess. Not too many of us down there. It's very diverse, and I really appreciated being surrounded by people that were extremely different than me, like great mixing salad, melting pot of a place to grow up. The music, the music was wonderful. The food is wonderful. The people are great. So
the weather's great.
Yeah, so the weather is fantastic. Now I get to experience mountains and different weather, which is part of the reason why I wanted to move here, was just to mix it up. But I was already a world traveler. My dad is an architect, my mom's a flight attendant, and my great-grandfather was a general in the Air Force. He was a pilot, and so he was also a CFI for the Air Force as well. So I kind of followed very much in the genetic diagram, if you will, of my ancestors. And first I became an architect, then I became a flight attendant, and now I became a pilot. So I didn't go the military route, but I very much, saw how my other family members did it and sought to do that as well. Yeah.
Wow. So that's incredible, actually, that you went through those stages as well, because I didn't know that. I knew that you were a flight attendant first, but I didn't know about the architecture part. So how did that come about? So you grew up in Florida, in Miami, and then what happened then? I mean, when did you start to with the architecture topic?
Ever since I was 10. I don't know if you're familiar, but we have this thing called the gifted program, which is if you have a certain IQ, and then you take this test when you're like about in kindergarten or preschool. Mm-hmm. If you're able to solve like math and creative problems on a more advanced level, then they put you in this specialized program where you go like 2 or 3 times a week to these special classes that teach you critical thinking. And it's kind of like today's modern Montessori school. But it's just a different way of It doesn't pigeonhole you into a particular grade learning level so that you have to learn like everybody else. It allows those students to continue their creative thinking on a level that's all their own, and then they just keep promoting that. So I was lucky enough to get into that program, and so I started designing houses at like age 10, and I remember designing like roller coaster parks and theme parks and city planning, and I was doing all of that at age 10, mostly because my dad would bring home, this is back in I was born in 1985, so I'm 35 now, so this is like in the 90s. Everything was still done by hand in architecture. My dad would bring home these plans of where he had designed like the Miami Beach Convention Center, like its first rendition. It's recently been redone by one of my favorite architects now, but and I would just play with that stuff, and I would just, as we all do, we're gathering information from the world and what we're given to us and what we surround ourselves with. And mine happened to be like architectural diagrams. And I was allergic to cats, and so my family let me rescue reptiles. So we became like a reptile sanctuary where we had at one point like 7 iguanas, 2 turtles, 2 Nile monitors, 1 snake, and then eventually I do have a bearded dragon now, so they're much easier to take care of than iguanas because they need a lot less space. But I just loved reptiles, and that was just kind of my thing, was like architecture and reptiles. And this is at like age 10. So I would sit there and my iguana would stay really, really still, and I would just draw every single scale, and it would look perfect. It would look like the perfect.
Wow.
It would just look like a rendition of a.
And when you played with the material from your dad, would he explain stuff to you as well, or would he just sort of like give it to you and let you play with it, or would you sort of take it through?
Totally. I would take like a square shoebox, and he would give me like old pieces of things that look like roof material, or little plastic pieces of plexiglass that I would just cut into walls, and I would just like start making houses and models and things like that, and making toys, or taking your little Disney toys and then making houses for them instead of buying them. So the design part came naturally to me. Gifts from my dad, and as well as the ability to just kind of play with those things and explore those things. And so I was always really creative. And then of course, a level of reality sets in when you start to grow up, where you're like, well, how am I going to make money? How am I going to make this combine my joys and my passions with a career where I can actually make money, so that I can use those passions to help better the world, contribute to the world. So I decided, I went to a fine arts high school and was able to do advanced ceramics, advanced drawing and painting, advanced black and white photography. And I was like, okay, well, you always hear starving artist associated with, the same thing. And so I wanted to become an architect, because I thought that was where I could use my creative skills in the arts the best, especially seeing that my dad had already done it. So, but then 2008 happened and the whole economy collapsed. And so, along with many businesses, as well as my dad's business, nobody was doing anything that was extracurricular leisure type things on their houses. So all projects were kind of halted. But growing up in Miami, which is always going to be surrounded by, partying and booze, it's really easy to get a job at a restaurant, because people always are going to eat, and people are always going to want to go out and drink and dance no matter what. I mean, it's 2020 COVID times, and people are fighting to get back into the bars, because that's part of the structure, and back then, pre all that was right when Facebook had just come out, and you still needed a college, .edu to be part of Facebook. So, and that this is pre Bumble or Tinder, where you're not meeting people yet on the internet. Like, it was still like plentyofishandmatch.com, where you needed like a laptop, So going to bars was very much part of our American social structure of how you're going to meet someone of the opposite sex, and that's what sells. So I started working on South Beach, and I made a lot of money, enough to buy, my Mini Cooper, and just, keep up with the Joneses. And
just from working in a bar. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Well, I picked up really fast because of my leadership skills, and I'm very organized.
Yeah.
And so I like assistant manager, general manager of like these nightclubs, smaller.
Okay.
And
Okay. Yeah.
we're between like 200 people up to 1,500 people, and just kind of jump around. You know, things open and close so fast on South Beach, but it's all the same type of people that are opening it.
Yeah.
All the same.
Let me ask you one thing about the when you would mention you were at the fine arts school. So you mentioned how, you know, obviously when you go to architecture, it's part arts and part science in a way. It sounded like you didn't want to go this like totally like radical artist kind of route, but you always had this kind of consciousness for, okay, I actually want to make money as well. I want to be, you know, in a safe position. Is that true? Is that accurate?
Yeah,
okay.
and I like a challenge, and I like things to be difficult but fulfilling at the end. So architecture class at the University of Florida, freshman year, we started with 400 students, and we only graduated with 40 in that same class. So that's how many people drop out and change majors.
Wow.
It can be weighted to engineering, except we go to the engineers to be like, solve this creative problem that I have. And the engineers are like, here is my science, here is my math, this is what I'm gonna stick to. And architects are like, no, let me push the envelope and let's, you know, invent a new material if we have to get it things that I want to do, you know. And that's how eventually we could go from brick and mortar to steel and glass to like these balloon structures that are, you know, suspensions and stuff like that, is because someone thought like, let's push the boundaries.
Yeah, cool. So okay, so we're at that level where the point in time you're successful working in these bars as in management. And then what happened?
But, you know, it's mostly working from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. You're a vampire. It's difficult to be healthy. Miami is the most beautiful, unhealthy city in the world. It's just, everybody looks spectacular, but no one's really doing great things for their body or their mind or their soul. So I just felt like I needed to shake things up. So it was actually my mom's used to work for Pan Am when she was my age back then.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
I was actually going to ask you which airline.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of an airplane buff.
Her sister was Eastern, and then Pan Am went out of business, and she worked for Braniff in 1992 when it was Braniff 2, if you were keeping up with that, with the aviation industry. And now she flies for American. So she's always been in the aviation industry.
Yeah.
And her dad being a pilot, and a lot of my dad's brothers are also pilots in the Air Force and stuff like that. Aviation just ran in our family, and we saw it very much. Yeah. So at this point, I still didn't know that I wanted to be a pilot. You know, my mom's friend called, and Barbara, and she's just like, "Hey, Delta's hiring." And even though my mom it's still flying for American Airlines, she's like, "You should go do it. We don't know when American's going to hire." Like, so it's 2011 at this point, and at 110,000 applicants, I was one of the 1,200 flight attendants that got selected, and I became a Delta Airlines flight attendant, and I was based in New York at the time.
Wow, this was 2012.
That was January of 2011.
2011. Okay, cool. Wow, so you moved to New York.
We have these things called crash pads, which is, I had a 4-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in Queens, New York, and a senior flight attendant was running it. She got married to a firefighter, decided that she was going to quit her job, so someone needed to take over the lease. Well, with my background in feng shui and organization and just architecture in general, as well as my background in being a general manager, and like the OCD kicks in of like, this has to be clean, this has to be organized, this needs to be done. It fell right into my lap.
Yeah.
Basically created a rent-free scenario where I was able to take that money and eventually pay for my private pilot license, you know, flat out, because I was able to create a rent scenario where I was being paid now to live in this apartment. So I was still commuting to Miami at the time, and played ultimate frisbee with my friends down in Miami in a club. Yeah. So I flew as many Wednesdays as possible. Yeah. And then back to New York. Yeah.
So this decision to join Delta or to apply, that was pretty spontaneous then, in a sense.
Yeah.
But something must have resonated. I mean, it was a bit, because always, you know, when we make decisions, usually to change something, usually something is pulling us, you know, in a different direction, and something is pushing us away from the place that we were. So I think you perfectly explained the pushing away part, you know, because you said, you know, the long hours, you know, and it's just unhealthy, and maybe, I mean, I've been out, lots of times, I'm from Berlin, and I spent some time in England, and I've always loved going out, but I think there can be a certain shallowness as well. And, it depends on the city, how shallow it is. I think there's some cities where it's easier to get a proper connection, even on a random night out, because people are just sort of wired that way, and it's part of the culture. But for example, I've been, I've lived in Munich for a while, and Munich is very different from Berlin, and it's more, I would say, superficial, and it's not really like people sort of intermingle. And in Berlin, it's a very open culture where it's you meet lots of different people, and it can actually be really, really cool, and meaningful in a way. So yeah. I know what you mean. So that was pushing you away, and then what was pulling you towards that when you first heard about that?
Well, I have a photographic memory. So I have this memory of, using my mom's flight benefits. When she got hired at American Airlines, she got relocated to New York for a year before she was able to transfer to Miami. And she chose American so that she could return to Miami. And I have this memory of flying to New York with my dad, seeing my mom's crash pad, seeing all the twin beds, like strewn about, and just visiting her in New York. And I just thought to myself, like, it would be really cool to live in New York. Like I get to travel. Like, I have missed many like school dances. Like, I've missed 8th grade school dances. I missed my prom because my mom's like, no, we're flying to the Grand Canyon this weekend, or we're going to Myrtle Beach to visit family, or, just we're going on a Caribbean cruise because we can, And so I was blessed that I was able to travel, pretty much fly, that allowed traveling to be accessible to me at such a age. And so back then you're like upset that you're missing a school dance, but then you realize like all the wonderful knowledge and opportunities that are presented to you through travel. And I already grew up in such a very diverse place that of course I want to see the world. I want to see places that I'd never seen before. And I went to Europe with my boyfriend at the time, right when we graduated college, for about a month. We did Paris, Amsterdam, and Rome, and that was my first big Europe trip, with a significant other. And I was like, how great would that be to do that for a living,
Yeah.
But with becoming a flight attendant and an aviator in general, a pilot, if you're planning to work for a commercial airline, or even an airline that is just based in America, comes learning how to create everything is so foreign, everything is so new that, we want to be creatures of habits. So it's how do we create habit out of that chaos? How do we find home when we aren't returning to home? And so that's kind of the make or break of what makes you a successful, flight attendant or aviator, is can you find that center? Can you find your peace anywhere, And so right. You notice that people become, I like to think that we're all addicted to something, right? And those addictions can be also healthy addictions. So with your free time on your layover, are you going to the gym? Are you going shopping at Whole Foods? Or are you finding the next new thing at Macy's? Are you going to hit up your favorite Irish bar? Are you going for a run on brand new trails? Like, everybody needs to find their thing that they do as kind of like their moving meditation, as kind of like their therapy, right? Whether you know that you're using it as therapy or not. And so it's very easy to use alcohol as your sense of home or your sense of relief. And, that's, probably the worst one, the most
of course,
unhealthy.
Many people do it. Yeah, many people do that.
You think about it, but it's also one of the most socially acceptable. And growing up in a place like me where there is no hiking, where all we do, yes, I play ultimate frisbee, yes, I play golf. But if you're not on a field playing sports like baseball or soccer, then we don't have outdoor activities in Miami. Growing up, I did my first camping trip here in Utah, and it's like 30 minutes to 3 hours in any direction is the most spectacular hiking, mountains, reservoirs, that I've ever seen. There's so many outdoor sports that you can just go and do. And I didn't have that growing up.
So what was that? Was that the thing that you discovered then, as you started working as an aviator, or as a flight attendant?
Yeah.
or how did that happen? I mean, because I mean, you started off, and then I assume they would first send you on like domestic flights, and then did you do international as well?
Yes, so you are qualified on all the aircrafts. So you very much can participate in international flights. We have these things called reserve days that are called A days, and you can basically on this day be used for any trip that they need to fill you in. So going international, of course, is like amazing. That's what you're always hoping for, is like to have a layover in Madrid or Rome or, you know, someplace amazing that you have never been to before, even if it's only 24 hours. But eventually I did become purser qualified in 2018. So I was intentionally flying Paris, Iceland, and Shannon mostly, and flying times in a row, like that was my trip. So then you really get this, even though I'm only laying over there for 2 hours, like, well, now I'm going to, you know, Notre Dame, and now I'm going to the Eiffel Tower, and now I'm going to, like, you know, my favorite shopping street or something in Paris. So I'm only there for 24 hours, but I get to do all the things that I want to do in that. But I definitely have had a breakup, if you will, with the social standards of alcohol being our main structure when it comes to the way that we socialize. And, you know, it was one of my many spiritual awakenings, but it's difficult when you have a realization that alcohol has such a hold on the way that we socialize, that when you try to pull away, you know, people don't like to see you change, even if it is for a healing, better way. And so they often try to drag you back in, which is why it's so difficult for people who have true addictions, because I don't have an addictive personality, but for many of those of us who do, even when you try to get yourself healthy, you don't know how to join friends at a bar or a party without picking up a drink, you know?
Yeah. It's very true. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that challenge of what do you do when you're in such a place? Because I used to work in management consulting, and there I was, you know, obviously always, you know, Mondays to Thursdays or Mondays to Wednesdays, and sometimes 5 days a week, I would just, you know, be sent to a different city. And I can relate to that challenge. It's not easy to then find your space. I mean, normally we would, you know, when you're there, you work quite hard anyway, but not 24 hours. So and you know, it's the same thing that as you describe. You know, it's so easy for people to go out and meet at the bar, and you can see it, of course, in all the hotels. You know, people, there's always someone there, and it's so close and it's so easy. So that's the first thing and the only thing that people do. And it is difficult. I mean, it's quite cool. I think it's really cool that when you have a layover, you know, for a bit longer before you fly back, you can actually go and see the sites. I've had occasions or projects where I would go to cities and I never really see anything except out of a taxi window or from my hotel room window, or maybe I, you know, went for a run, you know, once in a while, but I could never actually go see any sites because there's no time, and I would just go back home. So yeah, you got to find your way.
For our listeners, imagine like a time when you went on vacation, or imagine a time when you graduated high school and went to college, or imagine a time when you moved cities. Those big shifts in your energy, where you are completely open to new ideas and new experiences, is what makes being an aviator so fulfilling, right? Because when you move cities, you don't have any friends, you don't know your neighborhood, you're out trying all the new pizza places, you know, how do you meet people? Like joining clubs, going golfing, doing something that is actually getting yourself out there, versus you know, that hometown syndrome of where people never leave their hometown. They literally just get married, have kids, and then raise their kids in the same hometown, and they've never owned a passport before. You know, you can see how it can get scarier as time goes on, because we don't want change. We want to create these habits, you know, but change is inevitable, and embracing that change is where you just take that leap into the clouds, and you don't know what's going to be below there. Like, am I going to turn into a tornado, or am I going to hit the ground? I don't know, but I promise you, like 99% of the time, you're not going to hit the ground. You always land at some place magical, you know? And that's what makes those that are successful at remaining career flight attendants or pilots, that's what makes us great, is how quickly we can adapt to those scenarios.
And how was that for you? I mean, specifically when you started, what was that experience like for you?
So I'm still a creature of habit, right? So if it's funny how, like, if I lay over in some place, where was I? I was in Milan, for example. So I laid over in Milan. I'd never been there before, but, you know, I'm with other crew members who speak Italian, so they'd been there before. So, you know, we walk to the grocery store, we walk to our favorite restaurant, you know, we go see the Duomo, and we go do fun things. And then the next time I go to Milan, I go and do the same things. So it's like, I'm still a creature of habit. I still want to walk down the same street. I still want to establish some level of familiarity, whether that's like my reptilian brain or not. It's like I still want to do something similar. And the same with Shannon, Ireland. Shannon, Ireland has like this amazing gym that's in our hotel. So the first thing I want to do is go play in that gym, you know? And walk to, you know, there's these really great, I think it's called St. Mary's Cathedral, and there's this awesome where do they keep a graveyard. There's this really great famous graveyard, and I just like to always walk there and then go to the favorite bar and order like a real Heineken and get some really good, you know, seafood stew or something. And so, so I might be going to the same places and doing similar things, but I'm meeting new people along the way. I'm doing it with new people. I'm, you know, making new Facebook connections or friends and just chatting it up. And that's what makes it so exciting. So I'm still doing things that are brand new, but in a way that's going to make me feel comfortable, right?
Yeah. And what about? I'm wondering, you know, I mean, because this is an obviously huge topic, but what's also, well, my question to you also is, what about the actual experience of flying? I mean, how does that play into that whole experience, and how was that enticing in a way as well, or how did you? Yeah, what does that mean to you? The sensation of actually being in the air and being in the plane.
Yeah, my realization was, you know, we go through middle school, we do 4 years of high school, you do 4 years of college, you had your first job, and now I'm in my second job, where it's this being a flight attendant. And about 2 to 3 years in, all of a sudden I'm like, something needs to change, something needs to be different, right? Because we've been conditioned from childhood. Every 4 years, it's like new school, new friends, new something. And so you really start to notice 4 years into being a flight attendant, like, what things are too similar. Something needs to change. I need that big, you know, change again. And so that's when one of my best friends, Evan Kupalo, was like, hey, I just got all my pilot licenses. You should become a pilot. And I was like, you know what? Pouring Cokes and passing out peanuts is becoming too easy for me. My brain is not being,
right.
You know, I'm not using my brain. I'm not being challenged. I need a challenge. And those of us who are successful flight attendants and aviators, we love people. We love travel. And, you know, we understand that travel can be frustrating, and that, you know, people are going through these things that they're not familiar with, and that can just make someone angry. And we understand that is, we're not taking it. But how great would it be to do something that's challenging and fulfilling? And as a pilot, I learned something new every day. You know, I just became a CFI, which basically allows me to be able to teach all the things specifically for private pilot and commercial pilot licenses. But I'm always learning too. There's always something that I'm going to learn. Eventually, there's going to be more instrumentation I'm going to learn. Something new is going to change. There's always so much to learn, and that's what I love about being a pilot. Is every day I'm inspired. And being I was a flight attendant for 9 years, and it is a very fulfilling job, and I loved it. But I wanted more. I thought, I want to contribute to the world in a way that is more. And I had to meditate, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just becoming a pilot because you make a lot more money. I wanted to make sure it was something that I really wanted to do. Because if you're going to do something, eventually it's going to you, and you're not going to enjoy it again.
Well, I mean, what you just explained is really really resonates, and it's something that I've been, I would say, studying a lot more over the last year or two and understanding, I think, or at least I think I'm understanding a little more this idea or the sensation that we feel when we're not learning anymore, and it's sort of getting boring, and then getting stuck and not progressing anymore. And I think there seems to be, because I hear this I hear this so often, and I can see it with people, some people where I'm afraid they're not progressing anymore, and they don't realize that that's what's making them unhappy. So this is like a general, almost like an archetypical experience of us humans, that we want to develop further, we want to learn, and if it's just not, and if we're not able to, or we're not pursuing it actively, or we tell ourselves, no, let's stay in that safe space, and the money is good, yeah, the job is boring, but just keep on doing it. Then people either do, maybe they find a hobby, or they find some other outlets, for that. But in the worst cases, they just become really unhappy and frustrated, and they don't even know what it is, or they think they have to give up too much to find that new space as well.
Right.
But so that makes a lot of sense. But before we get into that, I was just wondering, what I was trying to get at earlier with the other question was, how did you perceive the sensation of flying as part of being a flight attendant and being on planes all the time? I mean, was that something special to you? Was it sort of boring? Was it just something that you didn't think about it for a long time? How was that for you?
So flying, both as a brand new flight attendant or as a pilot, is a lot of new psychomotor sensory overloads that you are not normally associated with just walking or driving, right? So the vibrations and the sounds and hitting turbulence, all of these are new sensations that are affecting the fluid in your inner ear, which your body is trying to register as which way is gravity, which way is up and down. And sometimes that sensation, if you can't see the horizon, can be very discombobulating, right? Which is how people get motion sickness and things like that. And just the vibration alone of being near those engines that are hurtling your aircraft 500 miles per hour through the air is a brand new sensation, and that can be very overwhelming. And this goes back to if it's new, if it's a new challenge or a new sensory, most people are prone to, hey, this is new, it's frustrating, it's foreign, I don't like it. But if you give yourself a chance, there's a Japanese saying that basically says that it's this really fermented tofu that has a really strange smell and taste. And they basically try it 3 times before you know whether you like it or not. And they take that saying and they say that you have to try everything 3 times before whether you like it or not. And it boils down to the first time you eat the fermented tofu, you don't have any probiotics or anything in your body that recognizes it. So it doesn't have the ability to digest it. So it can seem very frustrating, foreign, and unlikable. Then the second time, those things are already in your body, and so it starts to recognize it. It can now associate it with its benefits. The third time you eat it, it's fully ready. And now you understand how nutritious this is, how it can benefit you on a probiotic level. And now if you take that, you can start to see how if you try something new, that your first reaction would be like, oh, I don't like this. But, I used to not like olives. But then eventually, if I tried olives, 2 or 3 or 4 times, I'm like, oh, okay, I just didn't like those first olives, or I just didn't like that first, that I tried. So and that's something that we need to continue to do, knowing that humans, we're always growing, we're always changing, that trying something that you think you didn't like before, you may change your mind, And this is where we also fall victim to, is if you think of a really good friend of yours from high school, and now you're friends with them on Facebook, and they're a completely different person, that's your fault for holding them, that there would be the same person that you remember them as high school. People change, and we need to allow space for people to change, and accept that person as that same name, same person you knew in high school, but brand new outlook on life. People do. And we often notice it when it's for the worse, when we like, oh, I wish that they were doing better, I care for them. But when people are better, we need to celebrate that.
So and so does that mean or so how was that for you then with the flying sensations in the beginning? So did you go through that as well? Did you have some concerns that you're not going to like it, or how do you remember that?
I mean, I've been flying since I was little. I think the first time I got on a plane, I was like a month old, you know. But I really enjoy if I feel safe, if I feel the instructor who's teaching me how to fly knows what he's doing, or the pilot who's flying me as a flight attendant, I can put my trust in that person and know that they're going to speak to me anything that I need to know that would risk my health or safety, right? So besides that, I trust in the experience, you know. Turbulence, a lot of people are afraid of turbulence, but it's really just like being a boat on some waves. And if you think the slower you go on some waves, right, the bigger up and downs you're going to feel. But the faster you go, you're going to plane kind of through them, and it's just going to be choppy like this. It's the same in an airplane. We're basically like planing through air, you know. Air is a fluid, really, and the faster we go, the smoother it's going to get. So smaller the aircraft, the more turbulence you're going to feel in the same, you know, 15, 20 knots of wind as you would in like a larger aircraft.
And
so,
have you ever felt unsafe in a situation on a plane? That could be anything.
Ironically, the worst time to fly is during spring break, at least in North America. Based on how the Coriolis effect of the Earth is moving the wind flows coming down from the Arctic, and as well.
Oh, I thought you were going to say because of all the drunk people on the plane.
No, it's mostly because the hot air is rising, and then we get an inversion layer of temperatures, which then cause this mixture of air, but it also air doesn't like super great sometimes, and so it'll create like these like hats or these caps where air gets trapped underneath, and then you get these wind shear shifts of where, you know, in just 1,000 feet the wind will be moving in a completely different direction with completely different moisture components, and you've got that hot air rising, it wants to punch through, so that's what throws your aircraft around. So the worst turbulence I've always experienced is in April, which happens to be spring break, happens to be when we've got all the vacationers who never are on aircraft. Just happy flying the week that it's like the worst turbulence in North America.
But did you ever feel unsafe, or did you ever feel like uncomfortable in that situation?
I mean, I've been airborne like just twice in April, where like your feet leave the ground, and I've definitely had flight attendant friends who've gotten hurt, you know, where, you know, carts tip over, or, you know, someone whose head has hit the roof. Like, you know, we've got 25,000 flight attendants, and so things do happen. It is, you know, this is why we tell you to wear your seatbelt. We're not joking around, you know.
And it's unpredictable as well, right? Sometimes.
Clear air turbulence is unpredictable. For the most part, we do these things called PIREPs, which is basically pilots in front of you who have flown that route, who can relay to air traffic control that the turbulence was, you know, light, moderate, or severe. And so then we use that PIREP information as well as really advanced meteorological, scientific data in order to predict these things. So we do have some really great information, but it's still the weather, and we're still learning.
That's funny that you mentioned it, because I remember I distinctly remember this one time I flew from the US back to Europe. This must have been like 20 years ago, and it was an overnight flight. I think most flights are, right, from the US to Europe. It's like you go through the night, and then some turbulence started. It wasn't too bad, and at the time I didn't really have a problem with it either, but I'll come to that in a second. But then the pilot came on and said, hey, so you noticed, you probably noticed this. It's kind of, getting a bit bumpy. And then he said something like, we're gonna talk to some of the other planes in front of us and see how long it's gonna last. And then like, I don't know, 5 minutes later, you came back on and said, so this, we talked to this guy and that guy or whatever, and so we're probably in the clear in like 30 minutes or 45 minutes or something. And this is such a cool thing to realize, because it's just because to me, I've never experienced flight as a flight attendant or as a pilot, only as a passenger. So So sometimes I had the sensation of feeling kind of alone because you're in this plane, and then your mind starts drifting and thinking, holy crap, we're just in the middle of the Atlantic. It's dark outside, we're 10 kilometers above the ground, and you can feel really alone and really kind of strange. But this fact that the pi rep, or whatever it's called, this kind of opened my perception to the fact that, hey, we're actually not alone. There's dozens of planes in front of us. There's probably planes to the side of us, probably planes behind us, and that was kind of a comforting thought. And thinking like, hey, it's actually really, because sometimes, and I think I had that tendency, or I still have that tendency sometimes to overthink things, and I have had experiences where I did feel comfortable on the plane. It never got so bad that I would actually not fly, or sort of avoid flying. But I've had that, and I've only recently had to face that as well, and try and work through that, because it was getting to a stage where it wasn't comfortable anymore. And I had to go back to, I think what was helping me at the time, this is only, like 6 months ago, where I could feel like every time a little bit of turbulence was happening, I would feel a little bit of stress. And I thought, this is not cool. It's not fun anymore. And I thought to myself, and that goes back to that alcohol topic too. You can either try and, obviously you can just order a drink or something and then hope that, that sort of solves the problem, but it will never do that, I think. Maybe, if you get like sort of blackout drunk, and then you wouldn't notice anything. But I thought, I have to do something totally different. I have to be more conscious about what's going on. And now I thought, okay, what are the positive things that I can remember actually? What do I want this experience to be? And I tried to experience flying again, like when I was a little boy, when I was just loving it, and I had zero, so I was absolutely zero afraid of flying. And it didn't happen like this, but over like several hours and several long flights and shorter ones as well, I was able to deal with that and to feel actually a lot more, more comfortable on the plane again.
Right.
So,
well, if you think about stress and anxiety, those are natural occurrences, mostly brought on by hormones in our brain that are helping us to make decisions whether we're going to have fight or flight, right? And so, but we can also have a normal reaction to stress would be heightened senses, narrowed vision, so that we can accomplish our goal when our safety is in peril, right? And an abnormal reaction to stress would be like ignoring what's happening, laughing, trying to pretend like this thing isn't happening. And so really, those of us who the feelings of excitement versus feelings of being overwhelmed and stress are very similar hormones. It's just you deciding how you're going to feel, right? So that fight or flight syndrome is something that you get to make a choice of. So the more skills that you have in that particular scenario, for example, experience turbulence at night on an airplane, the more that you experience, the more you can be like, oh, this is normal. I feel safe. And, I can tough this out, as opposed to trying to run. And that's how it goes for all aspects of our life. If you think about it, is when I take a check ride, which is like the most stressful time, it's like do or die. Like I either got to fly this airplane exactly to the standards and pass this test. Otherwise I got to come back and pay all this money to do it again and retest and things like that. I just tell myself like, okay, I'm not going to be scared and freaked out. This is excitement. Like I'm excited to do this. And it's the same reason that we do anything that's full of adrenaline and thrilling. Like, why do you go skydiving? Why do you go bungee jumping? Why do you go rock climbing? Like these things that are tempting your life are thrilling because you get to take it, instead of that adrenaline being petrifying, you're taking it and using it to your ability to accomplish these great things. So that's kind of, that's why I love aviation. And I think anybody can learn to grow to love aviation. Yeah. And there's so many reasons why, the way that we're brought up, our past experiences, maybe even our past lives, there are so many reasons why we're prone to dislike certain things. Like, why do I not like dark places? Why am I afraid of heights? maybe we can't exactly explain why those things are, but you very much can learn to get over those fears too. You know, like I had a fear of spiders growing up, but like slowly I learned like there's good spiders and bad spiders, and some can hurt me and some cannot. I don't need to be afraid of all spiders anymore. And it's the same with flying. You don't need to be afraid of all flights. Aerobatic flying is what I'm addicted to right now, and there's not a separate there is a spin endorsement that you have to get to be a CFI, but there's no like separate certificate to become an aerobatic pilot. But I always loved riding roller coasters. When I was younger, my dad would go with me. He would tell me it was safe and it was fun. And now doing loops and flips and hammerheads and, avalanches and barrel rolls, like that is thrilling to me. But the first time I did
You actually do that? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, there's this local retired orthopedic surgeon here in Utah who's been a 20 competition pilot. And so I went up in his extra 300, which is just this amazing aerobatic plane with lots of power. And we go up to, about 12,000, 13,000 feet. And we just fall out of the sky and doing spins.
Wow. Amazing.
Do a dive to go like 120 knots so that we can get enough power to do a flip and then do a spin and come back. Yeah. First time I ever did that, was my brain shook enough. Like I was doing everything in my power not to throw up, even for about 3 hours getting outside the airplane. But the second, the third, the fourth, time that I went in that aircraft, it's thrilling to me because now my body is like, oh, we're not in danger. I'm just learning a new thing. I can imagine that like Scott Kelly went through the first couple times that he went into outer space, it's just like your body's floating and learning all these new ways to adapt. But as humans, we're very adaptable. Don't let go hold you back from being able to adapt to new situations.
So that basically, that's amazing. You're opening up the whole sort of future space. So I can already see you becoming a pilot and then taking the next step to becoming an astronaut.
Yeah,
am I
actually,
right?
I remember, I remember thinking at one point, I don't just want to become a pilot. Like it would be my dream to be like a commercial airline pilot, like for SpaceX, like taking people on tours, go check out the moon, or check out Earth from, 100 meters up or something, like it would be so great to drop into orbit and do 4 hours floating up there and come back down. And I was at the Women's in Aviation conference, which if anyone out there, especially females, are interested in becoming a pilot, or if you're just interested in aviation in general, join Women's in Aviation as well as the 99s, and we're worldwide. And I went to their conference in 2019, which was in San Jose, California. And I wish I could remember her name, but she was so inspiring. She was becoming an astronaut for NASA, but she got disqualified for some small medical issues. So she was like a 7th string astronaut and she never made it. So she became a pilot for a major airline instead. And then a couple years later, she got a call from SpaceX being like, hey, we're doing this commercial airline program. And so now she flies for SpaceX. And right now she drops like satellites and things in orbit. And then she free falls down from like 65,000 feet until she gets enough molecules over her airplane where she can then, safely land herself back on. But that was very inspiring. And I was like, why not just become a flight attendant? So to become a NASA astronaut, it takes a 4-year STEM degree, so science and math degree. And then you only need 2,000 hours of turbine time, which is basically like a multi-engine, high-powered aircraft. And then you could apply to be a NASA astronaut, and they'll put you through a 2-year program where you learn things specific to aerospace engineering and the physics of, flight. But yeah, you could totally be an astronaut. So I could totally fly for Delta, have some kids, and then become an astronaut if I really wanted to.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's because I didn't even know, of course, I didn't know the acrobatic flying that you do that too. I mean, that's cool because I was going to ask you about the just the experience of now, being sort of like properly in control of the plane and, being able to go where you want it, or where you want to. And so what's the like what's the journey? What does it look like in terms of like how long? When do you think you'll be ready to fly commercial airplanes?
So my journey in particular was I got my private pilot license, and then I flew for about 50 hours, about a year, and then I took a year off to save money, and then I applied for an education leave from my company in order to go to ATP, which is one of the most name-dropped, if not well-known, flight academies. And within 6 months, I was able to get my instrument rating, my commercial single, my commercial multi. But unfortunately, my leave expired, and so I had to return to the line as a flight attendant. Most people do continue to get their CFI at that point. I came back on as line as a flight attendant. I then moved from New York to Salt Lake City, and then I was able to get another leave where I didn't have to quit the company in order to continue my desire to be a pilot. So I did do some ground school for the CFI, and then unfortunately shattered my leg skiing. So there's always things that are going to happen, that your journey is not going to be perfectly as expected. You know, it's taken 4 years from the time I got my private to the time I got my CFI, and that's probably too long as typical. But I was able to pay through everything myself. You know, I only had to get half the amount of student loan that I really needed. You know, as I was able to save money, already having a full-time job. And so now, you know, during COVID times, there have been benefits and there have been detriments. And we really just need to focus on seeing all the beautiful benefits. Like, I am able to take the time where I could study all my lesson plans and teach people virtually via Zoom and stuff, how the things that they need to know in order to get their private pilot license. And so it's afforded me that time, which is wonderful. But now, you know, my chief pilot at the school that I want to work for, he just quit. So now there's a big shift going on where all the instructors are, who's going to be newly in charge? Who else are we going to hire? So, you know, things don't happen exactly as they want. It would have been great if I got my CFI a couple years ago and then I was already working. So now I'm you know, just updated my resume yesterday. I'm ready to get a new job, but you just have to keep pushing through and staying. Like, I highly suggest making vision boards, writing down what your goals are, because when I flip back to my journal, you know, 2 years ago, all the things that I said I wanted to do, I accomplished. I just thought I was going to be living in Denver instead of Salt Lake, but I moved to the mountains like expected. I got my pilot licenses like expected. And, you know, if anybody's single out there, I'm still looking for, you know, a boyfriend, but, but seriously, all kidding aside, you just got to tell yourself what it is that's important to you and what you want to do. And I encourage anybody, especially females out there who are maybe in America or near Salt Lake City or anywhere, that want to learn to be a pilot. It is completely possible. And you can be the first one in, you know, you don't have to have generations of pilots in your family in order to be a pilot. You know, Vincent, one thing that's really interesting is, out of all the commercially rated pilots in the world, there's under 7,000 females. It's less than 7% of all pilots are females. So that camaraderie of knowing other females or knowing other people that are at that same level, whether you're just getting your pilot because you want to own your own airplane and fly to grandma's house, versus, you know, all the way to becoming a commercial airline pilot. Everybody has different goals. Not everybody wants to work for, you know, the big airlines. Some people want to be bush pilots in Alaska. Some people want to work, you know, Grand Canyon sightseeing tours. Like, there's something magical about flying and seeing Earth from, even if it's only 10,000 feet up. You don't have to go to 36,000 feet up to see how magical the Earth is. But being able to, you know, this is the same reason that people do road trips, I would think, except I'm altitude. It's just, Earth is really magical that way. And as humans, we want to grow and we want to learn and we want to know more. And I mean, flight was only invented like 100 years ago. Like,
it's amazing. It's really incredible.
The fourth generation ever on Earth, at least that we know of, where we're able to invent flight. And now the atmosphere and go to the moon and, eventually Mars, like that's cool.
I love this message. I really love this because, right now, there's probably a lot of people, and even in normal times, there's so many things that we worry about. There's so many things that understandably so, so many uncertainties, but what you just mentioned, yes, you mentioned some of these really important things that I'm working on as well, just, defining where you want to be, what you want to do, and this vision board. I'm actually working on one. It's like my first one ever. And I haven't actually written down any goals yet, because I'm kind of like collecting my core values, or I would say my core, the core mantras, if you will, that I want to live by, the ones that maybe in the past I had neglected, but where I know that I need them and I need to follow them more to be able to sort of take that next step and reach that next level. But so that's really amazing. And also, I think, what you just said, and I think it's almost like a beautiful, I think because we've really covered a lot. It's almost a beautiful thought to wrap up this conversation, from my point of view, is to put things in perspective. Because yes, we know right now, we have this pandemic going on, and it's a catastrophe, and it sucks. But it puts this in perspective, saying, well, there's going to be a time after that. Plus, we can still experience these things, which we can be so grateful for, that we live in this lifetime where they have been invented, and we can do this. And if we put our minds to it, we can achieve this kind of stuff. It's really cool. I really like this. I really love this. This is amazing. And I think it's you radiate that too. This, like, and I think this is so powerful about your story, that you went through these different stages, and you didn't say, well, yeah, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it, and that was it. But it's like really going through these stages, and that's also something that I'm learning, and that I've learned in the past, and seeing more and more and more. No, it's okay to go through iterations, and to have phases, and to discover new things. You don't have to have that answer all the time. And I used to put myself under a lot of pressure, sometimes, to think, well, but you've got to make a decision. You've got to, or you at least you have to know what you want to do, and so to speak, because when you're in consulting, that's kind of the key characteristic, that it's actually always different. It's really always different. And I think there's just a reason why I actually worked in that job for such a long time, because I'm kind of made for these different things. I need these new situations and these new challenges. And well, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I think listening to you and listening to this stuff really, gives you hope. It gives you energy, and it's really inspiring. So thank you so much for this. And is there anything else you want to share, or you feel?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like, you really have to write these things down, find what your goals are, have faith in yourself, meditate, be silent, listen to not that voice inside your head that's going to guide you, which comes with being still, and trust that as you grow, the 5 people that you keep around you is going to be how you vibrate, is going to be how you resonate. And as you grow, you are going to lose friends, but always trust that you're going to gain new friends that are going to lift you up. And that's why I'm so appreciative to be part of HEX Collective, be part of our group, because everybody is so successful in their own way, and everybody is so accommodating and loving. And yes, you have those friends that you've known for forever, but most of my friends now are either flight attendants or pilots, or our Burning Man HEX Collective group. And there's a reason for that. Those are the people that are vibrating at your level. So you have to trust that people will live your life, but it's only going to be to your benefit. Yeah.
Well, that's spectacular. So it's great. It's really, really awesome. Thank you so much. It's been really a lot of fun. And I learned so much about you as well. It's really cool. What a journey. And I'd love to do this again sometime. We talked about other topics as well, but this is fantastic. And I can't wait to share this with our little family, with our community. So thank you, and all the best from Berlin to Salt Lake City. It's going on like 10 to 10 p.m. So I'm feeling like my energy levels dropping now as well. So I think it's a good time to wrap up, but this is so cool. So I'm gonna, leave it at that, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, have a good one.